There is a moment in every life when the illusion shatters. You trusted them. You believed the promises. You gave your loyalty, your vulnerability, your time. And then one day, without warning, the ground beneath you collapsed. A message, a lie exposed, a door quietly closed behind your back, a smile that was never real. Betrayal does not just hurt, it rearranges you. It feels like something was taken from you, your safety, your innocence, your faith in people. But what if I told you that in that exact moment, when they thought they broke you, something awakened inside you? Something ancient, something powerful. They betrayed you, and in doing so, they handed you a strength they can never take back. Today we are going to understand why. Before the betrayal, you were living inside a story, and it felt real. You believed certain people would never hurt you. You believed that loyalty guaranteed loyalty in return. You believed that if you were patient enough, loving enough, understanding enough, life would eventually reward you with fairness. These beliefs were not foolish, they were human. They were the quiet agreements we all make with the world so we can sleep at night. But life does not operate according to the stories we tell ourselves. It operates according to truth, and truth does not negotiate with illusion. When someone betrays you, something inside you collapses. It is not just trust that breaks. It is the entire narrative you built around that person, and perhaps even around yourself. The image of who they were, the image of who you were in relation to them, the future you imagined. In a single moment, it feels like the ground gives way beneath your feet. Psychologists sometimes call this a disillusionment crisis. It is the painful moment when the psyche is forced to confront a reality it has been avoiding. Research on post-traumatic growth consistently shows something fascinating. Individuals who endure deep interpersonal betrayal often emerge with stronger emotional intelligence, clearer boundaries, and a more stable sense of self. Not because betrayal is good, but because it forces a confrontation with reality that comfort never could. You begin to see patterns you once ignored. You remember small moments that felt off, but that you dismissed because you wanted harmony more than truth. You notice how often you excused behavior that violated your standards. You see the red flags you once romanticized as complexity or misunderstood depth. And this realization is painful, because it is not only about their deception, it is about your participation in the illusion. That is the part no one talks about. We do not just get betrayed by others. We sometimes betray ourselves by refusing to see what is in front of us. We silence our intuition. We minimize discomfort. We tell ourselves that love requires blindness, that loyalty requires self-sacrifice. That patience will eventually transform someone who has shown us who they are again and again. Betrayal rips the blindfold off. Reality is sharp. It cuts. It humiliates. It stings your pride because you thought you knew this person. It shakes your identity because you thought you were wise, perceptive, careful. Now you question your judgment. You question your memory. You question your worth. But hidden inside that crisis is something powerful. Clarity. For the first time, you see without distortion. You see how you were bending yourself to fit into someone else's expectations. You see how much energy you invested into maintaining a fantasy. You see how often you explained away disrespect because the alternative, accepting the truth, felt too threatening. Clarity does not feel gentle. It feels brutal, but it is the beginning of psychological maturity. Because once you see clearly, you cannot unsee, and something shifts in you. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop tolerating what quietly drains you. You stop chasing approval from those who have shown they cannot offer it consistently. You begin to understand that goodness does not guarantee protection, that kindness must be paired with discernment, that trust must be earned, not assumed. This is not cynicism, it is consciousness. Many people fear that betrayal will make them bitter, but the deeper danger is remaining naive. Naivety keeps you dependent on hope instead of evidence. Reality, however harsh, anchors you in truth. The betrayal did not destroy you. It destroyed the false story you were living in. And that destruction feels like loss, because illusions are comforting. They give us certainty. They give us emotional security. They tell us the world is predictable and safe. But illusion is fragile, truth is solid. When the illusion dies, you stand in the open, exposed, raw, uncertain. Yet for the first time, you are standing on something real. You are no longer building your life on imagined guarantees. You are building it on awareness. And awareness is power. It means you will choose differently next time. It means your standards will be clearer. It means you will listen to your intuition instead of silencing it for the sake of harmony. It means you understand that love without boundaries is self-abandonment. Betrayal forced you into reality, and reality, though unforgiving, is the place where strength is born. You may have lost a person. You may have lost a version of the future you once held tightly, but you gained something far more valuable: the ability to see clearly. And once a person sees clearly, they can never be controlled by illusion again. There is a reason heartbreak feels physical. When someone betrays you, it is not just your emotions that react, your body does. Neuroscience has shown that social rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The brain does not categorize betrayal as a minor inconvenience. It registers it as danger, as threat, as something that could compromise survival itself. That is why your chest tightens. That is why your stomach drops. That is why sleep becomes difficult and your thoughts loop endlessly at night. Your nervous system has been activated. It believes something essential has been lost. But here is what most people do not realize. When survival is threatened, something ancient inside you awakens: strength. Not the loud, aggressive kind. Not the kind that shouts or demands revenge, but a quiet, primal force that says, adapt, rise, endure. Before the betrayal, how much were you tolerating without even realizing it? How often did you silence your needs to keep peace? How many times did you shrink your opinions so you would not create tension? How frequently did you compromise your own truth because you feared losing connection? We tell ourselves it is love. We tell ourselves it is maturity. We tell ourselves it is patience. But often, it is fear of abandonment disguised as virtue. Betrayal forces a confrontation with that fear. It strips away the comfort of dependency and leaves you face to face with yourself. And that meeting can be terrifying, because now there is no one to lean on in the same way, no one to reassure you, no one to validate your identity in the way you had grown accustomed to. Yet in that emptiness, something begins to form. A woman who was cheated on after 10 years of loyalty may initially feel shattered. Her identity may have been built around partnership, around shared plans, around a future imagined together. When that collapses, she may believe she has collapsed with it. But slowly, something shifts. She pays her own bills. She makes her own decisions. She rearranges her life without asking for permission. She survives days she once believed she could not endure alone. And in doing so, she discovers a truth that changes her forever. She is capable. A business partner who was deceived may feel humiliation and anger. Trust broken in the professional world cuts deeply because it threatens stability. But when forced to rebuild, he learns new skills. He studies contracts more carefully. He develops sharper instincts. He creates something that stands on his own foundation instead of shared assumptions. The next venture is stronger, not because betrayal was good, but because awareness and independence were born from it. A friend who was abandoned during their lowest moment may feel unworthy at first. They may question whether they asked for too much, whether they were too intense, too emotional, too demanding. But as time passes, they learn to self-soothe. They learn to sit with their own pain without immediate rescue. They discover that loneliness, while uncomfortable, is survivable. And from that survival grows a deeper sense of inner security. You did not know you were this strong because you had no reason to test yourself. Comfort hides strength. Stability hides resilience. Dependency hides capability. Pain reveals it. There is something profound that happens when you endure emotional devastation and realize you are still standing. You wake up one morning and notice that the world did not end. You breathe and recognize that the air still fills your lungs. You look at yourself in the mirror and see someone altered, not destroyed, but reshaped. And with that realization comes a subtle but powerful shift. You stop fearing total collapse, because you have already experienced it. You survived the sleepless nights. You survived the humiliation. You survived the waves of anger and grief that felt unbearable. You walked through the fire and discovered that you were not made of glass. That knowledge changes you. It is not arrogance. It is grounded confidence, a quiet awareness that says, if I could survive that, I can survive what comes next. This is why betrayal, as devastating as it is, often becomes a turning point. Not because it makes you harder in a cold sense, but because it introduces you to your own depth. You meet parts of yourself that were dormant, courage you never exercised, independence you never needed, resilience you never tested. And once you discover your own resilience, no one can take that knowledge away. They may leave, they may lie, they may attempt to diminish your worth, but they cannot erase the fact that you rebuilt yourself from emotional rubble. They cannot undo the strength you cultivated in silence. They cannot take back the version of you that emerged from the pain stronger, wiser, and more self-reliant. Pain activated something ancient in you, and now that it is awake, you will never again underestimate what you are capable of becoming. When someone betrays you, something erupts from within that you did not expect. Rage, bitterness, a sharp, almost frightening desire to strike back. You imagine confrontations in your mind. You replay the moment again and again, this time with different endings, stronger words, colder responses, power restored to your hands. And sometimes, the intensity of these thoughts unsettles you. You think, this isn't me. I shouldn't feel this way. But what if it is you? Not the polite version, not the agreeable version, not the version that learned to smile through discomfort and swallow disappointment, but the deeper, instinctual part, the part that refuses to be humiliated twice. When betrayal strikes, it does more than break trust. It pulls back the curtain on your shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is everything you have pushed down in order to be accepted. Your anger, your selfishness, your capacity to say no, your ability to walk away without apology. The traits you were told were too intense, too much, too dangerous. They did not disappear. They waited, and betrayal calls them forward. This is not weakness. This is the psyche defending itself. When you feel rage, it is your inner system declaring that a boundary was crossed. When you feel bitterness, it is your intuition recognizing injustice. When you imagine revenge, it is your wounded dignity demanding restoration. Most people panic at this stage. They rush to suppress it. I need to be the bigger person. I shouldn't be so angry. Good people don't think like this. But suppression does not create virtue. It creates fragility. If you deny your anger, it does not dissolve. It buries itself deeper. It leaks out sideways, through passive aggression, through self-sabotage, through quiet resentment that poisons future relationships. The person who pretends they have no darkness is often the one most controlled by it. The most dangerous person is not the one consumed by anger. It is the one who has never examined it. Because unexamined darkness runs the show from behind the scenes. But when you face it, something powerful happens. When you acknowledge your anger, you learn what you will never tolerate again. You see clearly the line that was crossed. You feel it in your bones. You recognize how much you were compromising before, how often you were bending to avoid conflict. That anger becomes information. When you confront your capacity for coldness, the ability to detach, to withdraw, to say, enough, you begin to understand discernment. You realize that unconditional access to you is not a virtue. You see that trust must be earned. You understand that protecting your peace is not cruelty. And when you see your own darkness, truly see it, you stop being naive about others. You recognize that everyone carries this shadow, that people are capable of betrayal, not because they are monsters, but because they too have unintegrated parts of themselves. This awareness does not make you cynical. It makes you realistic. Integration creates power. To integrate does not mean to act out every angry impulse. It means to admit it exists, to sit with it, to ask, what is this teaching me? Perhaps it is teaching you that you were too accommodating. Perhaps it is revealing how deeply you feared confrontation. Perhaps it is exposing a hidden desire to be seen as good at any cost, even at the cost of self-respect. When you integrate your shadow, you stop pretending to be endlessly forgiving. You stop offering second, third, fourth chances out of guilt. You become conscious. Conscious people are harder to manipulate. You choose your trust carefully. You no longer hand it out as proof of your kindness. You observe patterns. You listen to tone. You pay attention to consistency. You understand that someone can be charming and still unsafe. You understand that love without boundaries is self-abandonment. And the boundaries you develop now are different. They are not walls built from fear. They are structures built from awareness. They are quiet, firm, clear. I will not accept this. I will not ignore that. I will walk away if necessary. There is no screaming in this stance, no dramatic revenge, just grounded certainty. They betrayed you, and in response, you met the parts of yourself you never knew existed. The fierce protector, the discerning observer, the individual capable of walking alone if required. These parts were always there, but they were hidden beneath politeness and hope. Now they stand beside you. That self-awareness is untouchable. No one can manipulate you in the same way again because you are no longer blind to your own depths. You know what you are capable of feeling. You know how dark your thoughts can become, and that knowledge makes you measured, not reckless. You are no longer shocked by human complexity, including your own. Wholeness is not about being pure light. It is about integrating both light and shadow into a conscious whole. Betrayal did not just hurt you. It introduced you to your full self, and a person who knows both their tenderness and their fury, both their compassion and their limits, is no longer easy to control. You are not becoming colder. You are becoming complete. Sometimes the pain of betrayal is not only about what they did. It is about what you built your entire identity around. You did not just love them. You became their partner. You did not just care about them. You became their closest friend. You did not just work for them. You became their most loyal employee. Somewhere along the way, your sense of self fused with the role you played in their life. And when they left or lied or replaced you, it did not just feel like rejection. It felt like erasure. Because if your identity is built on being chosen, what happens when you are no longer chosen? This is the deeper wound betrayal exposes. It reveals the invisible dependency you did not even know you had. Not dependency in the obvious sense, not financial reliance or constant neediness, but psychological dependency. The quiet belief that your worth is confirmed by someone else's approval. The silent assumption that your role in their life defines your value. And here is the uncomfortable truth. If your identity depends on someone else's validation, you are always vulnerable. You can be replaced. You can be criticized. You can be abandoned. And when that happens, your entire sense of self shakes. Betrayal shatters that structure. It feels catastrophic at first, because the part of you that said, "I am secure because I am loved," suddenly loses its anchor. The part of you that said, "I matter because they need me," no longer has proof. You feel small. You feel invisible. You question your significance. But this collapse, as painful as it is, contains something transformative. It forces individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming psychologically separate, not isolated, but whole within yourself. It is the movement from defining yourself by external roles to defining yourself by internal truth. When betrayal pushes you back into yourself, you are confronted with questions you may have avoided for years. Who am I without them? Not as someone's partner, not as someone's support system, not as someone's reliable option, but as a singular human being. What do I want? Not what keeps peace, not what maintains approval, not what fits into someone else's expectations. But what genuinely calls to me? What have I been ignoring? Perhaps it was a career you secretly longed for, but never pursued because it would disrupt stability. Perhaps it was your health, sacrificed to maintain a relationship. Perhaps it was your creative voice silenced because it felt impractical. When dependency dies, it feels like free fall. But in that free fall, you begin to build a new foundation, one that does not depend on applause or attachment. Look at how many people reinvent themselves after betrayal. A woman leaves a relationship that defined her 20s and starts a business she once dreamed about, but was told was unrealistic. A man betrayed by a company he devoted himself to returns to school and builds something entirely his own. Someone who was emotionally dependent on constant reassurance begins therapy, confronts childhood wounds, and discovers inner stability for the first time. These transformations are not coincidences. They are the byproduct of forced individuation. When you can no longer rely on someone else to reflect your value back to you, you are forced to find it within. That search is uncomfortable. It requires silence. It requires honesty. It requires admitting that you outsourced your sense of worth. But once you reclaim it, something shifts permanently. You begin making decisions differently. You choose relationships from desire, not fear of loneliness. You pursue goals because they resonate with your authentic self, not because they impress someone else. You speak more honestly because your survival no longer depends on being agreeable. Dependency feels safe, but it is fragile. Individuality feels risky, but it is strong. When you know who you are independent of who stands beside you, you become difficult to destabilize. You can love deeply without losing yourself. You can commit without dissolving into another person's expectations. You can walk away if necessary because your identity does not crumble in solitude. This is why betrayal, devastating as it is, can become a turning point. It burns away the false security of external validation. It exposes how much of your self-image was borrowed. It removes the illusion that someone else's presence guarantees your worth. And in that painful exposure, individuality is born. Individuality is not isolation. It is not arrogance. It is not cold detachment. It is a grounded sense of self that remains intact whether someone stays or leaves. When you stand in that place, relationships become choices, not lifelines. Work becomes expression, not desperation. Love becomes shared strength, not mutual dependency. They may have walked away, but in doing so, they pushed you back into yourself. And once you truly meet yourself, once you discover that your identity is not defined by who approves of you, you carry a different kind of power, a power that does not beg, a power that does not cling, a power that does not collapse when someone withdraws their validation. Because when dependency dies, individuality rises, and individuality is strength that no one can take from you. This is where most people fail. Not in surviving the betrayal, not in rebuilding their routines, not even in appearing strong on the outside. They fail in the invisible space of the mind. They remain attached. They replay conversations in the shower. They reconstruct arguments while driving alone. They check social media profiles they claim not to care about. They imagine scenarios where the other person finally understands what they lost. They fantasize about apologies that may never come, and in doing so, they unknowingly hand their power away again, because attention is energy, and wherever your attention goes, your life follows. Forgiveness is misunderstood because people think it is about the other person. They think it means saying, "What you did was acceptable." They think it requires reconciliation. They think it demands softness towards someone who showed them none. But forgiveness, at its deepest level, is not about excusing behavior. It is about refusing to let that behavior shape your identity and future. When you hold on to resentment, your nervous system does not distinguish between memory and present danger. Psychological research shows that people who practice forgiveness experience lower cortisol levels, reduced stress responses, and improved cardiovascular health. The body relaxes. The mind becomes clearer. Emotional rumination decreases. Why? because your system is no longer preparing for a threat that has already passed. Unforgiveness keeps you in fight or flight mode. Your body tightens, your jaw clenches, your thoughts sharpen into weapons. You may believe you are protecting yourself by holding on to anger, but in reality, you are keeping the wound open. Forgiveness is not surrender. It is strategic detachment. It is a conscious decision that says, I will not let this event define the architecture of my inner world. When you refuse to forgive, the person who hurt you continues to occupy mental space. They influence your trust. They shape your reactions. They become the invisible reference point for new relationships. You may think you have moved on, but emotionally you are still negotiating with a ghost. Forgiveness breaks that negotiation. It is saying, you may have hurt me, but you do not get to live rent-free in my mind. This does not mean you welcome them back. It does not mean you forget what happened. It does not mean you abandon your boundaries. In fact, true forgiveness often strengthens boundaries because it is rooted in clarity rather than emotional reactivity. Forgiveness is the release of emotional grip. Imagine holding a heavy stone in your hand. At first, it feels manageable, but over time, your muscles ache, your arm trembles, you grow exhausted. The stone represents resentment. The act of forgiveness is not pretending the stone was light. It is choosing to put it down. Revenge feels powerful in fantasy. It feels like justice. It feels like restoration of balance. But in reality, revenge ties you to the person who hurt you. It keeps your identity entangled with theirs. Sovereignty is different. Sovereignty is emotional independence. It is the ability to say, what happened hurt me deeply, but it does not define my capacity for joy, love, or trust in the future. This shift is subtle but profound. When you forgive, your energy returns to you. The hours spent replaying scenarios become available for growth. The emotional charge dissipates. Your mind, once cluttered with imagined confrontations, becomes spacious again. You begin to notice how much life exists beyond the betrayal. Forgiveness does not erase the scar. It transforms its meaning. Instead of a symbol of humiliation, it becomes a reminder of strength. Instead of a wound that defines you, it becomes a chapter that shaped you. Instead of a chain tying you to the past, it becomes evidence that you can endure and release. Many people confuse forgiveness with weakness because they equate anger with power. But anger is reactive power. It is loud, urgent, consuming. Forgiveness is grounded power. It is calm, deliberate, self-directed. Reactive power depends on what someone else did. Grounded power depends on who you choose to become. When you forgive, you are not saying, "You deserved my kindness." You are saying, "I deserve my peace." And peace is not passive. It is earned through discipline. It requires you to interrupt the mental loops, to stop feeding narratives that keep you trapped, to consciously redirect your attention toward your own future. You begin asking different questions. Not, "Why did they do this to me?" but, "Who am I becoming because of this?" Not, "Will they ever regret it?" but, "How can I build a life so full that regret becomes irrelevant?" This is the movement from victimhood to sovereignty. When you release the emotional grip, you step into something greater than revenge. You step into ownership of your inner world. You realize that while you cannot control the actions of others, you can control the meaning you assign to them. You can choose whether betrayal becomes a permanent identity or a temporary experience. Forgiveness is the final act of reclaiming power. It closes the loop. It says, the lesson has been learned. The illusion has been shattered. The strength has been activated. The shadow has been integrated. The dependency has dissolved. Now, the energy returns home, and when your energy returns to you, you are no longer reacting to the past. You are creating the future. That is sovereignty. That is freedom. Look back at your betrayal, the sleepless nights, the tears, the anger, the humiliation. Now look at who you are becoming: stronger, more aware, less naive, more independent, clearer about your standards. They thought they took something from you, but they stripped away illusion. They awakened your resilience. They introduced you to your shadow. They broke your dependency. They forced you to reclaim your power. And once a person has seen their own strength in the face of collapse, they can never return to innocence. You are not the same. And that is not a tragedy. That is evolution. They betrayed you. And in doing so, they forged a version of you they can never control again.